What's good, YouTube? Akil here, back with another video, and today I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite sales from the month of January from eBay. And as you guys know, I used to do these type of what so videos several times a month, maybe like 4 or 5 times a month, but I decided to scale back and just do these videos once a month where I highlight some of my favorite sales from that previous month. So if you guys are interested in these type of what so videos, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, y'all, so first up we actually have this vintage Polo Ralph Lauren cardigan that came out of my closet, and I'm going to be selling a lot of stuff from my personal collection and just stuff that I had laying around the house because, as you guys know, I'm still trying to build up my inventory. So first thing I did was just kind of go back to my roots and just start cleaning out my closet, cleaning out a lot of the things that I'm not using anymore, and this vintage Ralph Lauren sweater was definitely one of them. And the funny thing is, I actually thrifted this cardigan like 4 or 5 years ago when I first moved to California. So I spent no more than $4 or $5 for this sweater, and I wore it pretty often, but since moving to Arizona, you guys know it's super hot out here, so I'm hardly ever wearing sweaters and hoodies and things like that. So I just decided to go ahead and list this cardigan, and surprisingly it sold for 90 bucks. And after checking the comps, I seen similar ones sell for like 100, sometimes maybe 120, but as you guys can see in the photos, this one did have some like little minor signs of wear on the suede elbow patches, and it didn't have any holes or any major flaws or anything like that. But at the end of the day, I just decided to list it, you know, kind of conservatively, and it sold really quickly. So chances are I probably could have got a little more money for this sweater, but it is what it is. I'm still glad that I was able to move it in a decent amount of time. Next up, we got this Detroit hockey jersey, and I actually just picked this one up from Ross a couple days ago, and I got a really good comment about that. I'm gonna put that up on the screen here. The guy literally said, "I'm gonna need a raft for this jersey because the flood is real." Now, when I saw that comment, I was cracking up because basically what he was saying is that, you know, so many other people have this jersey listed that this one is probably not gonna sell. But I tell you guys all the time, even when I see an item, you know, is super flooded on eBay or even on Poshmark or somewhere else, I still might go ahead and list it, especially if I was able to grab it for a really good deal. And for the most part, I just try to practice patience with stuff like that. But this particular item, all I did was just promote it a little bit. I think I promoted it at 1%. That way, you know, it was a little higher up in search. And I picked up several different sizes of this jersey. And usually anytime I have multiple sizes of one item, I would just make one listing and list it that way. But since I'm really trying to build up the store again, I decided to list these jerseys like just differently. I listed every size individually on eBay. That way, you know, instead of just having one item popping up in search, I would have every size popping up on search individually, and I think that's what actually helped this one sell a lot faster. This one was in a size 60. The person that actually purchased this one was just super excited. They even left a little message on there as well, just letting me know how excited they were to get this, to pick this one up. And at the end of the day, I only picked these up for 15 bucks. So for selling it for 60 and picking it up for 15 was definitely well worth it to me. Next up, we got this pair of New Balance 574s, and I grabbed these up from Marshall's for only 40 bucks, and they basically had a full size run of these, meaning that they had sizes starting from like 7 all the way up to about size 11. So I just grabbed up all the pairs that they had. I think they had maybe 11 or 13 pairs available in total. So I just grabbed all of those up, and I was kind of taking a chance on these because all of the previous sales were international ones, and they all sold for over 100 bucks. And I figured I might as well sell these for at least $100, and the size 10.5 sold really quickly. So I was definitely glad that I was able to take a good chance on these. And of course, I still have a few sizes left, but I think once we get closer to the spring and summer, these should start to fly off the shelves. Next up, we got this Resist All Cowboy hat, and the funny thing is I usually don't pick up cowboy hats and stuff like that because it usually does kind of provide a little issue when it comes to shipping. You definitely need a sturdy box when you're shipping out these type of cowboy hats. But thankfully, I did a ton of retail arbitrage a few weeks ago, so I had a ton of packing supplies coming into the house, and this cowboy hat fit perfectly in one of the boxes that I had. And like I tell you guys all the time, I try to ship out items securely and safely as possible. And even though I have a ton of big poly bags that could have easily fit this hat, I made sure I put it in a box just so that the buyer can get it, you know, just safely and securely, and I wouldn't have to get any returns or anything like that. So definitely keep that in mind anytime you guys are shipping out hats or, you know, things that can definitely get damaged in the mail. Next up, we got this Canon EOS Ti film camera, and I always pick up vintage cameras anytime I can find them. And these aren't super old, they're just film cameras, but at the end of the day, they're still very popular. A lot of people still love shooting with film cameras, and this one sold for 60 bucks, and I think I picked this up from the thrift for like $5 or $6, and it sold within maybe 3 or 4 weeks after listing it. So that's why I always pick these up anytime I find them, because they usually sell pretty quickly and the profits are always good. Next up, keeping things going with some of the vintage items. This is actually a vintage camera lens, and this is from the brand Contacts. And the thing is with this brand, I've sold it in the past. I sold one of their vintage cameras for like 200 bucks. So I knew that Contacts brand was definitely one to be on the lookout for. Only downside to this lens is that it definitely had like some dust in the lens. Now sometimes you can literally just unscrew it, wipe out the dust and be good to go, but I didn't actually have the tools needed to open up this camera lens. So I just sold it as is, made sure I took some really nice close-up photos so that the person can see that it was dust in the lens, and it sold for 100 bucks. No, it actually sold for 120 bucks plus the $7 shipping. So that's another thing I'm trying to implement a little more this year, is just start charging for shipping. Some items I'm probably just going to not charge shipping for, but certain items I'm definitely going to be charging shipping for, and this is just a really good example of that. Next up, we got a pair of Huarache baseball turf sneakers, and I also picked these up from Marshall's the same day that I grabbed up those New Balances, and these were only $16.99, and they had two pairs available that day. One was in a size 13 and the other one was a 15, and 15 isn't a terrible size, but just from prior experiences, size 15 and like 16 usually take a long time to sell. For me personally, my cutoff point is usually around like size 14. So I didn't even pick up those 15s, but in retrospect, I probably should have picked those up. But the good thing is the size 13 sold really quickly for 80 bucks. And like I said, I picked them up for only like $17. So I made a good amount of profit on those shoes. And the best thing is that they sold really, really quickly. Next up, we got a pair of snowboarding pants. And I actually grabbed these up from Burlington for only $20. And these ones sold for $89.99. Now, the only other person that I saw that was actually selling this one was the official Adidas eBay store. And they had those listed for like $150 or something like that, something crazy, but they didn't have any previous sales. So I went ahead and I listed mine for $89, and it sold within about 3 or 4 days. So possibly sold it a little too cheap, but at the end of the day, I'm just glad that it sold when it did. Next up, we actually have a bundle, and I usually don't sell a ton of like combined orders here on eBay. That's usually more like a Poshmark thing, but I actually sold a pair of pink Polo Ralph Lauren pants that I picked up from Dillard's for like $3 during their crazy clearance sale. And also sold a pair of golf shoes that I picked up from, I think these were actually from Burlington, for only 20 bucks. And in total, these sold for $104. So the really good thing was that I just combined the order, so I only had to ship these out in one package. So of course I saved some money on shipping. But the best thing is, like I said, it sold to one person, and I usually don't sell a ton of like bundles or combined orders. So that was always a really good thing. Next up, we got a pair of Keen hiking boots, and these were in kind of a tough size. It was in a size men's 7.5, but I still had to pick these up because these were brand new, and I picked these up from the thrift store for I think like $7 or $8 in my area. And I finally came across some good thrift stores that's not super expensive, so I had to grab these up, and these actually sold for $84.99. It took a couple weeks for these to sell, but at the end of the day, it sold pretty fast for me. Next up, we got another pair of New Balances, and these are a pair of 997s, more of like a more recent model for New Balance, and I actually picked these up from PacSun. Now the funny thing is, I never sourced from PacSun before, but I'm definitely going to start paying closer attention to stores like that, because they had these on clearance, and I think I only paid like $34 for these shoes. And once I seen them, I knew that they were going to bring in some good profit. And once again, anytime you sell athletic shoes over $100 on eBay, you save a ton of money on fees. Next up, we got another pair of shoes, and this is a brand that a lot of people don't usually know about. This brand is called Samuel Hubbard, and I sold this brand a few times in the past. I picked it up in California maybe like 5 or 6 times, but it's not a really super popular brand. But the good thing is it sells for a decent amount of profit, and these ones sold for $69.99. And if it wasn't a better size, this was in a size 8. If it was like in a size 10.5 or maybe an 11, I would probably be able to list them for a little more money because those sizes are a little more popular. But at the end of the day, it sold for like $69.99, and I think I spent $8 on these shoes. So overall, definitely happy with that amount of profit. Next up, we got another hockey jersey, and I don't sell a ton of hockey jerseys. I'm really just trying to get into it more often now. And I used to tell you guys I would grab up a hockey jersey as long as it has a player's name on the back. Those just tend to, bring in a little more value. And this one is the perfect example of that. This one sold for $100, and I remember picking this up in Ross for only $15. So it took maybe 2 months for this one to sell, but when it did, I was definitely happy with that because it sold for so much profit. Here's another really good find that I grabbed up from that PacSun that same day. This is a pair of Adidas Rivalries in kind of like that New York Knicks colorway, but these are Rivalry lows. So when I saw these and I checked the the comps. Once again, I only seen a bunch of international sales, so anytime I see stuff like that, I know that it probably will sell internationally because certain stuff are just trending, you know, in other places in the world. Sometimes Europe, a certain shoe model might be super popular, so people are just trying to grab it up here. So I listed those for $100, and I think I spent no more than $30 for those rivalries, and they sold really quickly. So still have a few pairs left, maybe like 4 or 5 pairs. So I'm pretty sure once we get closer to the summer and the spring and more people are like shopping for white shoes, those will probably fly off the shelves. Here was also a really interesting sale. This actually came from Ross, and this is actually my first pair of B grades that I ever sold. This is actually called the Nike Air Jordan Latitude 720s, and I think I just threw Red Octobers in there just for, like, you know, some extra keywords and stuff like that. That possibly might be the colorway, but I'm not even sure. But those sold for $100 with free shipping, and I think I spent $49.99 on these. So I took kind of like a gamble on those because they were B grades, and they did have that B grade stamp right in the size tag, which let me know that it had some type of factory flaw or some type of defect. But I just made sure that I took really good pictures and made sure that I included the fact that it did have some defects. I think I listed it as new with defects, so the buyer knew what they were getting, and it still sold for over $100, so I was glad that I was able to save that money on fees. Next up is a really solid brand to be on the lookout for. This is actually a kimono that somebody put in the men's section. That's the only reason why I came across this, and I'm not gonna butcher the name, but I think it's pronounced Yasuko Kirisaka.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So as soon as I saw this brand, I just instantly had to check the comps. And these were selling for like $50 to as high as $100+ if it was brand new. So I just listed this more on the conservative side for $65 with free shipping, and it sold the very next day. So clearly I listed this way too cheap. I probably left some money on the table, but it is what it is. I had this sitting in my death pile for a very long time, and because it was one of those like kind of flowy pieces that I really didn't know how to photograph, I just threw it up on a hanger, put it up on the wall, and just took the pictures really quickly, and it sold super quick. So definitely be on the lookout for this brand, because you guys can probably make some more money than I did with this. But the good thing is I only spent like $2 or $3 on this, so I can't complain. So keeping things going with stuff coming out of the closet, here is a blazer that I actually wore a few times, but I'm not wearing blazers and stuff like that too often, especially with the pandemic and we really don't have much places to go to. This is actually a blazer that I thrifted maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and the brand is called Haspel. But it's like a really dope plaid and brown blazer, and I would usually like pair this with some jeans and some shoes. I think I actually have a photo on the gram of this one, so I'll put it up on the screen if I still have that picture. But I was wearing this pretty often when I first found it, and like I said, it was just sitting in the closet after a while collecting dust. So I just went ahead and listed this for $50, and it sold within 3 or 4 days after listing it. So definitely be on the lookout for this brand Haspel. Sometimes they sell pretty fast, but then other times, just with any other menswear piece like blazers and suits, sometimes it will sell really quickly, or sometimes you might have to wait a few months, and thankfully I was able to list this at the perfect time. Now last but certainly not least, something else that came out of the closet was this pair of double monk shoes from the brand Beckett Simonin. I actually worked with this brand a few times in the past when I was doing more like social media influencing, and I ended up selling these shoes for $100. The good thing is I wore these shoes a few times to a couple events and stuff like that. But I have so many dress shoes, so many suits and stuff like that that I'm really not even wearing right now. So I decided to go ahead and list these, and they took about maybe 3 to 4 weeks to sell. But the good thing is they finally did sell, and since these were completely free, it was all profit. Alright y'all, that's all I have for today's video. So if you guys enjoyed that one, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you guys are interested in these green consistency tees, make sure you guys hit that first link in the description, and don't forget to use code consistency10 for 10% off your order. And until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.